Venezuelan Vice President for Economy Tarek El Aissami stressed the importance of cooperation with Saudi Arabia in order to achieve balance on the oil market and to improve oil prices after the pandemic. In the United States, the Democratic National Convention continues after making Joe Biden its official candidate for presidential election. In Nigeria, locals and militia sources announced that members of the Islamic Senate took hundreds of hostages in a northeastern Nigeria town. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Laura Palmeiro. Vice President for Economy Tarek El Aissami stressed the importance of the proposal of the Saudi Arabian Minister for Energy and Oil, Abdulaziz bin Salman, at the same time highlighting the OPEC Plus declaration of cooperation to achieve balance on the oil market and to improve oil prices after the pandemic.
Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, Minister of Energy and Oil of Saudi Arabia, launched an interesting initiative. We call it the 3C. First, the cut, second, the compliancy, and third, the compensation. Compensation to ensure that the equilibrium point is immediately restored with 100% compliancy by all participating countries with the declaration of cooperation. It is not only a just mechanism, but vital for the efforts to rebalance the course, to help achieve long-term stability of the oil market and thus improve prices.
Vice President of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, in the most recent balance sheet of COVID-19, reported that in the last 24 hours were recorded thousands of 171 new cases, 46 of them cases coming from abroad, and then figure of 6 deaths due to the coronavirus.
Firstly, report that during the last 24 hours, 1,125 cases have been registered in the national territory. Of these, we must report that 287 cases are in Miranda State, followed by the Capital District with 198 cases distributed in the 22 parishes of the state, mainly in El Valle, Sucre, Coche, and Antimano. Also, we must remember that in this week of radical quarantine, we have special plans for these parishes.
Peru has reported the highest number of COVID-19 deaths per 1 million of its population in South America. According to Health Ministry figures, the death toll now stands at over 26,600. The mortality rate stands at 807 fatalities per 1 million inhabitants, while the number of confirmed cases per 1 million people stands at 16,630. Meanwhile, the Peruvian Medical College has warned of a lack of over 16,000 medical personnel to treat patients, while also urging Peruvian President Martín Vizcarra to comply with employment benefits. Over 6.7 million Peruvians lost their jobs between April and June this year due to the novel coronavirus triggered economic crisis. According to the National Institute of Statistics and Information, this represents an employment contraction of 39.6% compared to the same period in 2019. Meanwhile, job offers for women fell by 45.3%. For the youngest workers aged between 14 and 24, employment dropped by 43.7%, while for people without university education, employment offers fell by 46.3%. On a national scale, the commerce and service sectors represented 88% of the total job losses, while the construction sector was the most affected with a contraction of 67%. In Peru, inmates at a prison which saw protests over a lack of measures in the face of the coronavirus pandemic, leaving 9 dead and 67 wounded, have now organized to protect themselves. Inmates at the Laurigancho prison now serve as health officers to alert prison authorities of any possible COVID-19 cases. In each of the 24 pavilions of the prison, these volunteers use digital thermometers and oximeters to check the temperatures and oxygen saturation of their companions. According to official figures, 330 prisoners have been killed by COVID-19 in the 68 prisons across Peru, and another 6,600 have been affected with the novel coronavirus.
Tenemos las áreas de aislamiento.
We have isolation areas for vulnerable patients like elderly, hypertensive or diabetic people to attend to that group in case of a COVID-19 rebound. That's the idea. The idea is to create an epidemiological containment ring within the same prison facility to prevent thousands of inmates from going to hospitals, because due to the saturation of beds and doctors outside, they could die or compromise the health network and occupy beds outside.
In Mexico, tens of thousands of prospective students began taking the entrance exam for the National Autonomous University of Mexico this Wednesday. Students wearing face masks and shield line up a safe distance to enter the University Olympic Stadium after having their temperature taken and being given hand sanitizer help. Each student sitting the exam carried just a pencil and photocopies of their identification into the venue, after university authorities decided that strict security measures were required, thus banning the use of cell phones and electronic devices. The Cuban COVID-19 vaccine candidate that was recently registered for clinical trials was officially presented to Cuban authorities this Wednesday. Details of the Finlay FR1 vaccine candidate were presented to Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel and the group working to combat the coronavirus in the country. Dr. Vicente Vélez Bencomo, director of the Finlay Institute of Vaccines, noted that the team that has developed the vaccine candidate are confident that it will prove effective. He noted that on June 28th, the three main creators of the vaccine candidate were injected with it, and an increase in antibodies to fight COVID-19 has been observed. Having passed animal testing and been approved by the Cuban Public Registry of Clinical Trials, the drug will now go to phase 1 and 2 clinical trials on humans. We'll be right back after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, the Democratic National Convention continues after making Joe Biden its official candidate for the November 3rd presidential election. This Wednesday, the vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, reoffered the importance of the right to vote in the need to implement a new political change. The meeting discussed various important issues for the country, including the control and prevention of violence by firearms, the migratory situation in the territory, and climate change. The event is scheduled to end tomorrow, Thursday, August 20th, with Biden's acceptance in the presidential race. United States government announced a new series of sanctions imposed on United Arab Emirates-based companies for their relationship with Iranian airlines. The United States Treasury Department noted that the sanctions on Partia Cargo and Delta Parts supply companies are due to their collaboration with Iranian Mahan Air after Emirati companies provided material support to the Iran's flight company. Sanctions imposed affect Amin Madavi, an Iranian citizen residing in the United Arab Emirates, for being the owner and managing director of the Partia Cargo. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that the United States will demand that all United Nations sanctions be reimposed against Iran on Thursday. The move follows the Trump administration's embarrassing defeat in the UN Security Council to extend an arms embargo against Tehran. Trump said Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will travel to New York on Thursday to present the U.S. demand to reimpose the sanctions, accusing Iran of significant non-compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal, which the U.S. unilaterally withdrew in 2018. The Trump administration is calling to reimpose all international sanctions that had been eased under that deal. Meanwhile, several nations have stressed that the U.S. has no grounds to make such demands as it is no longer a party to the deal. And Iranian authorities rejected President Trump's statements noting that the United States is no longer party to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action on Iran nuclear deal. Chief of Presidential Staff Mahmoud Vaesi highlighted that the U.S. had failed in all its attempts at the United Nations to put further pressure on Iran, since withdrawing from the deal while recalling that it could no longer invoke the agreement's so-called snapback mechanism, a provision that allows the countries that came up with no deal to reimpose international sanctions on Iran in the event of a violation of the terms. Iranian health authorities offered an update on COVID-19 cases this Wednesday. Ministry of Health spokesperson Sima Sadat Lari reported 2,385 new coronavirus cases, taking the total number to over 347,000. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 death toll stands at almost 20,000 after 168 passed away in the last 24 hours. The cities of Mazandaran, Tehran, Qom, and Golestan are among the most affected areas in the country. Iraqi Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi met with the managing director of the International Monetary Fund in Washington this Wednesday. According to a statement released by the Iraqi Prime Minister's office, al-Kadhimi discussed the possibility of cutting a deal with the IMF to support the Iraqi economy to become less dependent on oil revenues and to rehabilitate other sectors to reduce unemployment in the country. IMF Director Kristalina Georgieva stated she admired the steps taken by the Iraqi Prime Minister to achieve economic reforms despite the challenges. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has warned of foreign intervention by Western states in Belarus' internal affairs.
We are concerned about what is happening in Belarus. We are concerned about the attempt to use the internal situation in order to interfere in these affairs from abroad. Not just to interfere, but to impose on Belarusians those rules that foreign players consider beneficial for themselves.
France has recorded more than 3,700 new coronavirus cases in the last 24 hours, representing an increase of 1,500 of the previous day. Bars and beaches were busy in the tourist sector of Nice on Wednesday, despite the health authorities warning of a rise in coronavirus cases. The number of COVID-19 patients hospitalized and intensive care units was slightly down, but authorities have warned that the transmission of the virus is spreading among all age groups, especially young adults. Meanwhile, face masks have been made mandatory across most cities in France. The COVID-19 death toll now stands at 30,500, the seventh highest in the world. Spain reported 3,715 new coronavirus infections in the past 24 hours, marking a new daily record since the country came out of a strict lockdown in late June. Madrid bore the brunt of an increase, logging 1,535 new cases, followed by the Basque Country and Aragon regions with around 470 new infections each. 14 people died across Spain in the same period, down from 21 the previous day. In the past 7 days, 131 people have died from the virus, the health ministry informed. Cumulative cases, which include antibody tests on patients who may have already recovered, rose to over 370,000. Welcome back to From the South. In Nigeria, locals and militia sources announced on Wednesday that members of the Islamic State took hundreds of hostages in a northeastern Nigeria town. The terrorists attacked the town on Tuesday night, taking hundreds of hostages, forcing some other residents to flee. According to the security sources, ISWAP group is trying to build up its influence in the Lake Chad region. After many of the victims have returned to the town on early August after fleeing a bloody attack, 2 years ago the jihadists captured the fleeing residents and attacked a nearby military base protecting the town.
I'm not going to stay in Kukagua because there is not enough security, and Boko Haram is still coming to Kukagua. I am afraid of that.
Members of the Southern Africa Development Community committed to Mozambique to act together against terrorist actors in northern Mozambique. From Maputo, our collaborators Lade Mutabemba extended us.
Governments of the Southern African Development Community's countries pledged on Monday to support the Mozambican government in the fight against terrorism in the north of the country. On the occasion of the 40th anniversary of the SADC, the former executive secretary of the organization, Mozambican Thomas Salomao, argued that the region must gather energies to fight terrorists in Cabo Delgado. Salomao understands that this issue cannot be seen only as a problem for Mozambique at the risk of being dragged down for the rest of the continent. During the last days, the government forces claimed that at least 59 terrorists were killed in response operations of the defense and security forces. Last week, armed groups invaded the port of Mochimboa da Praia, and the Mozambican Defense Minister Jaime Neto said that the armed groups are infiltrating the communities and commanded the fighting against the village.
Almost 500 fighters from a faction of one of the largest armed groups in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo have surrendered to the government just over a month after it attempted to overthrow the group's leader. Soldiers from the NDCR, a rebel group seen as having close ties with the National Army, sang and danced before handing over an assortment of small arms at a ceremony on Monday to the village of Kashuga, about 75 kilometers north of Goma. Fighting has raged between two groups of the NDCR since July 9, when a section loyal to Deputy Leader Gilbert Wawira Shuo attempted to oust the leader Shimirai Gidan, who is the target of UN sanctions.
Yesterday, while I was in mourning, they came back to my house at night. They killed him when he had no problems, and we don't know where they went after that. Now we're very happy because we know that all these misfortunes are over.
The government of Egypt has informed that all foreign visitors will have to show coronavirus test results. Egypt's Prime Minister said that all travelers arriving to the Northeast African country will have to present PCR test results for the new coronavirus on arrival from September 1st. Madbouli also added that Friday players will be allowed to resume in mosques from August 28, and public parks, entertainment parks and zoos will be allowed to receive visitors from the beginning of September, but with limited capacity and under strict health and safety protocols to be issued by the Ministry of Endowments. According to the Health Ministry of the country, COVID-19 tally stands at 96,914 with a death toll of 5,197. And United Nations authorities have called for a negotiated solution and a peaceful resolution to the international situation in Mali.
Reiterates his call for a negotiated solution, peaceful resolution of their differences, and expresses his full support for the African Union, ECOWAS, in their efforts to find a peaceful solution to the current crisis, including through the good offices of a special representative. Our colleagues on the ground are emphasizing that the work of the UN peacekeeping mission must and will continue in support of the people of Mali and in close liaison with the Malians, including with the Malian security and defense forces in the north and center, where the situation is still very worrying.
Likewise, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, speaking on behalf of the European Union, has condemned the military coup in Mali and called on the economic community of West Africa and states to resume political negotiations in order to secure a peaceful solution.
We condemn the military coup. We are working for stability and peaceful conditions in Mali. The focus must be on the fight against terrorism in the country, and we support the effort of the regional organization ECOWAS to find a political solution now. I believe that it is very important that the ECOWAS member states exert all their political influence so that the best possible solution can be found that supports a peaceful situation.
In an interview with Telesur, expert of African issues Reinaldo Bolivar noted that military interventions are commonly used to overthrow governments in Mali.
The events in Mali show a certain homogeneity regarding the army, which since 2012 has transformed to play a role in the political affairs in Mali. In March 2012, there was also an ousting of President Amadou Touré by a sector of the army that conducted a similar procedure to this. They abducted him. Then he was taken to a military barracks and was forced to resign. Beyond the public reactions, this has been the procedure.
And the analyst also noted that Mali has experienced instability since 2012 following the overthrow of President Amadou Touré and the intervention of French troops in the nation.
There is a generation in Mali, which is that generation between the age of 60 and 70, and which has been ruling the country practically since 1994, when Alpha Condé was in power. If we analyze them, each belongs to the same political sectors. After the overthrow of President Amadou Touré in 2010, due to a strong campaign that had defeated terrorism in the north of Mali, that had even proclaimed an independent republic, France conducted an intervention. Since then, there has been instability in this African country, located in Western Africa and, by the way, a country that has a lot of wealth but lives in extreme poverty.
We have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Laura Palmero. Thank you for watching.